Hello and welcome to SDPN's 2023-2024 NBA season previews. We're going down south to Memphis, to Beale Street, to take a look at the Grizzlies as they're headed into an all-important season. Tons of talent on a young nucleus that is looking to reset from their bad vibes and a woeful ending to their last season, with Jaren Jackson Jr., Morant, and Desmond Bane at the forefront of it all. With some tweaks around the roster, a major trade, and ultimately most of their core group returning, can the Grizzlies finally go from fun young team to legitimate NBA title contenders? Let's find out. But first, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more NBA content. The season is almost here, and we have tons of great videos coming your way to get you prepped for what should be an awesome season. It was definitely a weird year for the Grizzlies. The Morant controversy became the #1 topic revolving around the team, and for better or worse, created a sort of dark cloud over the head of what was otherwise a really fun and entertaining season in Memphis. Desmond Bane had another career year as their all-encompassing shooter and secondary creator, and despite battling through injuries to start the year, put up a really impressive season that made him one of the premier guards in the entire league. And because of that, he inked a 5-year, $207 million contract extension this summer. Their big man, Jaren Jackson Jr., also had a career year, putting up monster numbers on the defensive end, making strides offensively as a shot creator and scorer, and winning the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year trophy. For their part, the Grizzlies won 51 games and held the second best record in the West headed into the postseason, even despite the lingering jaw stuff. But still, they were stumbling their way into the playoffs, with their center Steven Adams dealing with a knee injury for the back half of the year and Brandon Clark tearing his Achilles in March. Adding the Morant controversy into the mix only helped make things worse. To add to that, Morant suffered a hand injury in their first round series against the Lakers, hampering him throughout the series. They looked thoroughly outmatched by Los Angeles, losing in 6 games, and it didn't help that their wing defensive stopper Dillon Brooks continuously shot himself and the rest of the team in the foot with his trash-talking and weary shot selection. The Grizzlies were upset by the Lakers, and very shortly after that decided to shake things up in a major way. First and foremost, they decided to rid themselves of Brooks, telling him that they would not be re-signing him in the offseason, and Brooks has made sure to let them know every step of the way. Second, the Morant controversy spiraled even more, forcing the NBA to take action and suspend the star point guard for 25 games for the upcoming season. And that's a big wrinkle as it pertains to the next big thing that happened for the Grizzlies this summer, trading for Marcus Smart. Towards the end of June, the Grizzlies and Celtics sent shockwaves throughout the league for their blockbuster trade, with Memphis shipping out Tyus Jones to the Wizards, sending 2 first-round picks to the Celtics in exchange for the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year, Smart. The trade was massive for Memphis in a few areas. First of all, they gave up draft equity for the first time in a while to make an actual splash. Second, they traded arguably the best backup point guard in the league in Jones in order to acquire Smart. Jones' importance to the team last season and for the last few seasons can't be understated. He was vital for when Morant missed games and was really important to keep the Grizzlies' offense afloat without him, and played virtually mistake-free basketball for Memphis off of the bench. The Grizzlies will miss Jones' thorough and steady hand this season, in that there is no question. But with Smart, the Grizzlies tried to combine the skills of Jones and the defensive prowess of Brooks into one singular player, and I think they accomplished that. I already made a video in late June detailing why I think this Smart trade is a massive win for the Grizzlies, but I'll go through my major points. First of all, in Smart, the Grizzlies have someone who can slot into Morant's role for the first 25 games of next season and keep them afloat alongside their core of Bane and Jackson. And when Morant inevitably comes back, Smart is a versatile enough defender for him to stay with the starting lineup or either come off of the bench. Now, admittedly, him starting next to Morant and Bane opens up the Grizzlies to some problems in the size and spacing department, and ideally, Smart would come off the bench and fill in Jones's role, but it's still a lineup that they can play around with. Think of Morant, Bane, Smart, Jackson, and Adams, and while Smart, Morant, and Adams aren't shooters, there's a world where Smart's ability to make plays as a connector and passer actually helps the Grizzlies' lackluster half-court offense. The issue the Grizzlies had with Brooks in the starting lineup was that he was far too trigger-happy with his shot selection, and that he ultimately wasn't much of a passer or creator for others. In Smart, they now have that. Besides, like I mentioned, Smart is a versatile defender who can guard up in positions and does extremely well guarding larger guards and wings. He can replicate a lot of what Brooks brought to the Grizzlies at the point of attack, defending pick and rolls and being able to switch onto multiple positions. With Smart and Jackson, the Grizzlies have the 2 past Defensive Player of the Year winners, and they were already the 3rd best defense in the league last season. They are going to be hard to score on this year. And if Smart does, in fact, come off the bench once Morant comes back, then I think he'll do a great job of making plays for the Grizzlies bench and feasting in transitional lineups for them. Above all else, I think the major difference between Jones and Smart is the fact that Smart is an elite defender. And while with Jones, the Grizzlies had to sacrifice that when they were playing him. They won't have to when they insert Smart into the lineup now. He's not the same efficient scorer and playmaker that Jones is, but he makes up for it with his intelligence on both ends of the floor. And above all else, I think this is the major point here, Smart is going to be a great locker room guy for this team. Not only can he maybe help provide some guidance to a young budding star like Morant, but he can also serve as an adult in the room for a team that is trying to get over the hump. With Smart and Adams, the Grizzlies have 2 of the most well-liked and vocal veterans in the league, and I think it should help them take that next step as a franchise. This is going to sound strange, okay, but trading for Smart is the exact type of move that we look back on in a few seasons and say, this is the reason the Grizzlies became contenders. And I think that's a massive win for them. It was a great trade, especially when you consider the issues they've had in the playoffs as a team that struggles in the half court and has to concede things defensively in order to become more adept offensively. As far as the other offseason additions goes, the Grizzlies made some fringe moves to their roster as well. They acquired Isaiah Todd from the Suns, the big man entering his 3rd season in the league, who has spent the last 2 seasons with the Wizards and has only played in a total of 18 NBA games. But he was a 5-star recruit out of high school, and he already has experience in the G League, playing for the G League Ignite and Capital City Go-Go. Todd is ultimately a developmental piece for the Grizzlies, but he might be able to add some assurance for them in the front court. The Grizzlies also traded for Josh Christopher, a guard entering his 3rd year in the league after 2 years in Houston with the Rockets. He was a draft analyst favorite for many when he landed in Houston, but he just hasn't been able to really get consistent run. Maybe with the Grizzlies development staff, he can finally turn the corner in his career. Memphis also added former Memphis Tiger Derrick Rose to the bench, and while Rose is at the tail end of his career and has consistently played in fewer and fewer games with each passing season, maybe he's revitalized in Memphis. Besides, until Morant comes back, the Grizzlies do need some assurances at the guard spot. With that in mind, they also signed Shaquille Harrison, a guard who has bounced around the league in his first 5 seasons, trying to find a consistent home, and maybe Memphis is that for him. And at the 2023 draft, with their sole pick, the Grizzlies selected Jaren Jackson out of South Carolina. Jackson was the #1 player in the 2023 high school class before reclassifying for 2022, and despite a wonky fit in South Carolina, the big man averaged over 15 points and 6 rebounds in his one and only year in college. He had a few impressive games in Summer League that showed off his ability to create for himself and defend on the other end. While he is also more of a developmental piece for the Grizzlies, he's definitely the most intriguing young player that they acquired this summer. And that's really been the Grizzlies' motto as of late, finding and developing talent. Even besides their offseason additions, the Grizzlies have Santi Aldama, David Roddy, Kenny Lofton, and Zaire Williams, 4 guys that they're hoping can eventually turn into legitimate rotation players on a playoff team. Maybe the most intriguing of the bunch, although they really all are, is the development paths of Williams and Aldama. Aldama was big for the Grizzlies last season, especially when they had to deal with season-ending injuries to Adams and Clark in the front court. He started in 20 games, averaged over 20 minutes a night in year 2, and showed off an ability to space the floor, shooting nearly 36% from behind the arc on almost 4 attempts a night. At 6'11", he has the size to be a good defender and has quick enough feet to be able to guard multiple positions. I'm really high on Santi, and I think especially given the fact that Clark is going to miss a chunk of the season recovering from that Achilles tear, the Spaniard is going to have a much larger role this season for the Grizzlies. With the loss of Brooks in the offseason, the Grizzlies don't have a ton of wing depth anymore, and while Smart might fill some of those minutes, seeing if Williams can turn the corner this season season will be key. Zaire had a solid rookie season in Memphis. He even started in 31 games with the Grizzlies dealing with injuries, but he too had to deal with injuries in his second season, and it really derailed his development. Hopefully, ideally, he has a healthy season in year 3 and can get more run because they'll need him to be a savvy wing defender. The offensive side of the ball with Zaire is the big question, especially with the Grizzlies' lack of shooting, and Williams shooting 29% from 3 just isn't going to cut it. If he can become a more consistent shooter or just an improved shooter, there's a real pathway for more minutes this season. But the player I'm most intrigued by for the Grizzlies this year, especially with their floor spacing questions, is Luke Kennard. You can make the case that even despite Bane being on the team, Kennard is the Grizzlies' best shooter, a career 44% marksman from behind the arc, and while he only played in 24 games for Memphis last year, he shot a whopping 54% from 3 on nearly 6 attempts a night. He is lights out on that end, and I am curious to see how head coach Taylor Jenkins throws him into lineups this season, especially with the addition of Smart, who has improved as a shooter but isn't elite by any means. That's why I think Kennard might get some run with the starting lineup. With the lack of floor spacing in their lineups, he can serve as a release valve on their half-court offense, and if he's camped out on the weak side, it can sort of alleviate some of the pressure off of the Grizzlies' primary creators. Ultimately, the question with Kennard will be how much he can hold his own defensively. He is not a good defender, can't navigate through screens, and isn't the strongest guy in the world either, but his shooting is going to be invaluable for this team. The Grizzlies are projected at 45.5 wins next season, and I think given the fact that they lost 2 key rotation pieces and are going to miss Morant for the first 25 games of the year, I'm going to take an under here. They're still going to be a good team, they're still going to win a lot of games, and realistically, they'll probably prove me wrong and win 50 plus games for the 3rd season in a row. But ultimately, this feels like a bit of a transition year for the Grizzlies as they sort of figure out their new identity with Smart in the fold. Sometimes you got to take a step back in order to take a giant step forward, and I think the Grizzlies are positioned to do just that. They are still primed to be contenders for the foreseeable future with Jackson, Morant, and Bane, and as long as they can grow into their primes without any hiccups, if you get what I'm saying, I don't see how that doesn't happen. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We will see you later.